Okay, let me know when you're ready. I'd like to call the meeting to order, silent reflection, and then a pledge to allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Jay.
Mrs. Cynthia? Mr. Diver?
Here.
Mrs. King?
Here.
Mr. Schuler?
Here.
Mr. Tinkin?
Here.
Mr. Borlaug?
Here.
Mayor Mechanica?
Jay, would you read the statement of compliance, please?
Pursuant to the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice filed in the office of the Borough Clerk, posted on the Borough website and in the municipal building, published as a legal notice in the Co-Star newspaper, and mailed to those requesting notice and providing payment in accordance with Borough policy.
Can I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Diver?
Yes.
Mrs. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuler?
Yes.
Mr. Tinkin?
Here, yes.
Mr. Borlaug?
Yes.
Tonight we have Matthew Clark here with us, who is going to give a presentation. He is the Monmouth County Tax Administrator. And if you recall, we had some discussion regarding the new assessment program. Some of the council was very concerned about it. So we have asked Mr. Clark to come this evening and give us a presentation on that particular issue.
Far more importantly is Mr. Rich here, Freeholder Rich is present with me.
Gary Rich, he's a
Yes.
freeholder. Gary, you want to stand up so everybody can see you?
Hello, everybody. How are you tonight? Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, we'd like to, Matt's done a great job on this program. It's something that's been endorsed throughout the county. I'm going to let him talk about it. This is really his project, and it's really one of the first in the county, or I should say one of the first in the state. So we have a lot of precedents, kind of the same things that we're trying to do at the county level, just for your information. Is we really lead in a lot of ways, and what Matt has done really is leading, making this whole process a whole lot easier. So he's going to talk about that, because I know that there were some comments made about some of the processes and how they're done. But these are standard. There's nothing here that anybody should be worried about. Ultimately, it will save, there will be a cost savings for everyone. But I'll let Matt talk about that. But thank you very much for the opportunity to come and explain it to you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. One thing that I would like to clear up is, in the press, it had stated that this was effectively started in Trenton, and Monmouth County chose to hop on board. Factually, this has been born and bred and evolved in Monmouth County over the last 6-7 years. The intention was to build a better tax function, and it's taken us this long to have the opportunity. I'm quite frankly quite energized as to the actual quantifiable potential this will represent, provide to the taxpayers. The overarching goal of this program is to take the property assessment function as we know it and scrap it. The idea here is to create an environment where the assessments for the first time are transparent and genuine. We're no longer talking about fractional assessments where a revaluation goes on the books and time goes on and the markets appreciate and depreciate, so that we could be talking about well, my assessment represents 80% of the market value or 50% of the market value. No, this environment is intended to establish for the first time, every year annually, the assessments equal the market value. So that when we discuss it, or when you discuss your neighbors, you're actually talking about something that is reasonably understood by everyone. There are several components in this overall program, 5, that affect no less than 100 identifiable components of the assessment function. Relative to the comments that have been, I see as concerns for this body, I want to address only 2 of them, and I'll do it in brief. The change in the assessment calendar is simple. The current model is that the municipality sets an annual tax base, the sum of the assessments. Then you create your budget, and then you have your appeal process, so that you create your annual levy based on something that has changed. So you end up, the collector ends up with a 3rd, 4th quarter exposure of under collection. The town they could either look into a crystal ball and guess what that number is and budget for it early, or they have to be exposed to emergency financing with interest in the 3rd and 4th quarter to pay their bills. What we've done relative to the calendar is simple. We simply took the appeal process and put it in front of the budgetary process, so that on an annual basis, you get your notice of assessment, you then have the right to appeal it. Once that's been concluded, then this body speaks to factual numbers, an understanding of what another dollar in that levy is going to represent to the taxpayer. That can be a discussion for the first time. So the purpose of the change of the calendar is to do away with a lot of the smoke and mirrors and save an awful lot of money. I'll leave it to the individual town to represent just how enormous that exposure is to the individual town. But that alone for Monmouth as a whole is a multi-million-dollar savings. The next issue that I talk about is the change in the revaluation process, which has a lot of people concerned. One of the statements was that it would be overly intrusive. The current model is that the local assessor is constrained. The assessor, a revaluation outside entity comes in at roughly a cost of $70 per line item, per household. And they set the new assessments. Those assessments stay the same until the next revaluation, or something, either an appeal or physically changes. You do a demolition, you make an addition, something changes about the property. But you see what's constant in the old model is that the assessment stays the same year after year. That opens up, that is clearly our significant problem in the current model. What we need to do, because it's staying the same number year after year, when we look at the town from bird's eye view, we see that not all markets stay the same. There's sub-markets in every town. They're closer to Spring Lake, to the south, to the north, to Wall Township, to the golf course. Traffic flow changes. Whatever the case may be, during that 10-year holding period, values don't change uniformly across the board. What we want to do is establish an environment whereby the assessments can be accurate on an annual basis. When in the current model where we're prohibited from making changes, it creates pockets of inequities. And those inequities mean 2 things. Someone's overpaying and someone's underpaying. If you're in the position where you're underpaying, let it ride. But that means every dollar you're not paying in a uniform environment means someone's overpaying them. They're underwriting your existence. That's what we want to address for this one component. We want to establish an environment where it's 100% of market value on an annual basis. And to do that, what we've done is take the old revaluation process and we broke it into 3 components: the inspection part, the valuation part, and the appeal defense. Rather than absorbing this as a centralized county function, what we've done is take the commodity process, the inspection process, and we propose to put it out to a private vendor. Why do we want to do that? Because we don't want to expand the footprint of government. We don't want the public pension and benefit package to be expanded. So we're going to say, we're going to go out and get a very reasonable price on the inspection process. So far, almost 40 of our municipalities have already engaged in these contracts. And the number's coming in at $21 per inspection. There are public documents to be viewed. So when we look at these inspections over a 5-year period, 20% of the town inspected annually, so that over every 5 years, 100% is inspected. So if we take that 5-year cycle and double it, we're roughly talking about $40 for the inspection piece versus our old $70. That's a $30 per parcel savings, quantifiable, real, we already have. Yes, sir.
So if the current system, the tax assessor doesn't go in the house, they just drive by or whatever.
No, the revaluation is an internal inspection, absolutely. So once every 10 years, you would go through an internal inspection. In this new model, it would happen twice every 10 years.
I got that. So how do you go from $70, it's the same inspection, right?
Yes.
How is it magically $21 instead of $70?
No magic involved. I had stated that the revaluation company provides 3 components: the inspection, the valuation, and the appeal defense, 3 identifiable services. What we're doing is telling your assessor, you must now do the valuation and you must do the appeal defense, so that on an annual basis. And you immediately say,
Back up.
okay?
You're telling the assessor, the person who's inspecting the house,
No, an outside entity.
an outside entity, this company is
Collecting data about the house.
Right, okay. They're going to be responsible for the...
No, not at all. Your local assessor, Mr. Elias.
So in other words, aren't you really just shifting the cost from one group to another?
Mr. Elias is not getting paid more to do this function. And this has been understood from the onset of this program, that the local assessor would have to absorb a significant new work product. Why would they do that? Now, you're fortunate here in Spring Lake Heights because you have Mr. Elias, and he happens to be one of the best assessors that Monmouth County, maybe quite possibly in the state. He's quite capable. The understanding is that they are going to perform that annual reassessment function. Why would they do that for no cost? Because when we look on an annual basis, a huge amount of their appeal defense outside the revaluation contract, the local assessor has to defend the assessments. It's been a growing and growing work product. What used to be a handful of appeals is now a significant work product, both at the county tax board and the tax board. If they perform an annual reassessment, they will reduce their personal exposure to the work product of appeals.
To the less appeals is what you're saying, because
Yes.
more frequent assessments?
Yes. So the idea is that, well, our current appeal environment is one that permits a 15% high and low, this huge range, saying, it's not an exact science. We don't have to be that good. We are looking incrementally within Monmouth County to move from this current corridor of acceptable values to a fractional 2% above and below 100%. This is our target, to be that accurate. Now, we're going to have one-off properties that are unique and we can't defend, but globally, overall, we want to talk about market value with a high level of confidence. How do we get to that level of confidence? Through an education program for the assessors, okay, but also so that they have extremely reliable, updated data, hence the need for the internal inspections. So, to sum up the answer to your question, we're getting the savings because the assessor is absorbing that work product. By absorbing the work product, they are actually going to be shifting their current commitment, the appeal defense, to valuation.
So do more on the valuation side and less on the defense side.
Absolutely.
That's what you say. Okay.
That is what I'm saying.
Do you want us to hold our questions to the
No,
end of the
no,
presentation?
no.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
No.
I mean, I'm listening to this, and it seems like we're shifting costs from the county to the local.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Not,
But, well, just, you know, you're saying we're gonna go from $70 to $21, but then our tax assessor has to assume a whole new group of duties when
you
he's.
pay
Well,
that
let me
$70.
finish. I understand that, but let me finish. He's only here an hour a week. So it's gonna cost the town more to have him here for a longer duration, and we're not talking about the effect on the taxpayers themselves of a rolling reassessment every 5 years. It seems to me that this is a big tax grab.
okay, great, tax grab, that's,
I'm just, you know,
I-
I'm sure that's how most of the residents
Frankly, I agree with you.
gonna
That's what we're getting.
Frankly,
That's what we're getting.
Rich, I
Okay.
agree with you, make the same point.
okay, and that's fine. Tax grab, all of the money that we're talking about is money that we're addressing the municipal costs, not the county costs. So that $70 to $40 is money that your savings has nothing to do with what goes on at the county.
I don't see how I'm gonna save that money if I have to bring in my tax assessor for many more hours to do
What
work.
makes you believe you currently
No,
don't
what
bring
you
him
said
in?
was the cost of assessing a house is $70, you're gonna get it down to $21 on average.
That's for the
That
inspection
doesn't,
piece,
that's the inspection piece, fine.
okay?
But
we're
now
talking
on this
about the
side,
assessor.
my costs are obviously gonna go up.
No, no, not at all.
I
Oh, well, and.
don't see how you can have it both ways.
So,
So you say.
okay, so what I've explained is that the assessor, although he's employed here 1 hour a week, he has been spending many hours in the appeal defense. He's employed to do a job, and if he can't get that done in his 1 hour office commitment, he has to put in whatever time's necessary to do it well. And that's exactly the service that every municipality in this depreciating market has been receiving. Mr. Elias does quite a bit more than his 1 hour a week here. So as opposed to doing the valuation defense through the appeal process, he is going to be spending time doing the valuation on his terms so that it is defendable. It becomes defendable so that when the taxpayer receives it, they say, my house is worth $500,000, my assessment's worth $500,000, I have no reason to appeal. What that brings us back to the discussion of the assessments are transparent. What remains is how much the governing body is going to raise. That's where it comes back to. For the first time, it's very clear that the assessments become defendable year after year. We have to earn that confidence. Yes?
Has this been piloted? Are there any data to substantiate the expectation of the cost savings over time that you're talking about? Has this been piloted in Monmouth County at all for several years?
No, and here's the difficulty. You can't run a system like this, that we have a intricate system where you have your own budgets, but we have so many shared budgets. We can't have one municipality do this and run at 100% all the time, and not have other municipalities. That's the requirement is that all municipalities go to 100% so that when we know that Spring Lake Heights, Seagirt, if they're worth 1.5% of the overall county value, then they will pay 1.5% of the shared levy.
Right.
It's that straightforward.
No, we understand. It would just be easier for us to talk about this with the constituents if there's been a track record. I mean, no disrespect to you gentlemen, thank you for coming out, but, you know, the state doesn't have a great track record of doing things that well. The county, hit or miss. So it would be easier for us to say, look, these are substantiated savings over time, not just projected savings from, you know, the county. That's all. That's why I asked if there's piloting. But if there's no piloting, there's no data.
There is no data other than the expectation of the contracts. If I stood 5 months ago and said to you, well, this is what the contracts are going to be, and you say, well, what are you basing that on? It's because we performed our due diligence as to what the private market would charge for this, and sure enough, those numbers are coming in exactly where we expected them. So when I speak to $70, that's factual. $40, that's factual. That's a big savings per municipality for the county as a whole. If we extend that to the state, man, hundreds of millions of dollars.
You know,
over
I
a
understand
whole
that.
period.
I mean, I guess our concern is moving forward, after all the tax assessors kind of get a hold of the market and see what's going on in the market, I believe you'll probably slowly see tax assessor bills or requests from locals to rise. So is there any evaluation built into this program where they're looking at kind of the cost of ownership over 2, 3, 4, 5 years? So 5 years from now, the county can come back and say, all right, things are working as planned, or what we're seeing is a large increase in what assessors are now
Absolutely.
charging municipalities.
Absolutely.
Is there a safety valve for municipalities?
Yes, there is. This is a pilot. And if in fact, one of the requirements is that at the end of the 5th year, that it gets reported back to the governor, and then they decide whether or not they are going to continue allowing us to operate in this environment, or if we can demonstrate what we hope to be, all the savings that I'm portraying will happen, it replaces the old model. So it is right within the bill, it says 5 years, report submitted to DCA, taxation, and the governor's office. Ultimately, the legislature will decide whether or not it continues.
Hey, Matt,
Yes.
I know you've been doing this stuff for years, and if anyone knows how many tax appeals are filed every year, it's certainly Matt. You expect this to have an effect on the number of tax appeals that are filed?
Absolutely.
And what happens in tax appeal? You have your assessor there, correct?
Correct.
You have your borough attorney.
Correct.
What types of reductions do you hope to see in the number of tax appeals that are filed as a result of this program? I mean, it sounds like by equalizing the assessed values, it's going to limit the ability to challenge these numbers, which
Not the ability, you have the,
Well, you always have the ability.
You just don't, you wouldn't need to,
Wouldn't have
because
to.
they got it right. You don't, as long as we get to the point where the taxpayer sees that the assessments on an annual basis are correct, then we've accomplished that huge goal of, yes, sir.
I guess it all sounds great, but how do we know they got it right? And I know you want to go from a window of, say, 15 on this side or 15 on this side down to 2, and I get that, but I'm still concerned about the effect on the taxpayer themselves, the person that owns the house. What happens to them? I understand how we're going to save money here and maybe readdress and shift how some of this occurs, but if you're assessing someone's house every 5 years,
Every year.
okay, every year,
Well, 20% every year.
20% every year.
No,
Right.
you're-
20% of the town will be assessed.
You're inspecting 20% every year. You're reassessing every year. Every year, the assessment is reviewed.
So, let me go, if you mind, if I can.
That's
I don't think
scary
that
to
was-
me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I have to say, I'm not thrilled about this.
So everybody's reassessed every year.
Correct.
Okay.
That sounds like it's even more ripe for accidents. I guess it might be the right word. But anyway, if you,
Explain to me what you mean by asking.
if you're, so if you're reassessing every year, everybody every year,
Yes.
and I admittedly don't know a lot about the home assessment business, but what I do understand is when somebody does an appraisal on real estate, they look at houses that sold within the last 6 months that are within a mile that are of like kind. So for example, Cape Cods to Cape Cods, Center Hall Colonials to Center Hall Colonials. You're reassessing every year, 20% or all of them,
Correct.
all
Oh, 100%. Every property within the town gets reviewed.
of them. So there's
and-
no trend to
The trending is based, you have the prior year assessment of sales prices, so that's what you're basing that. So for 2014, we would have looked at the last year, year and a half of sales to see, we'll trend the oldest ones to see if there's a change in the neighborhood. So we'll do a paired sale analysis to see if over time there has been a trend, but we'll be looking within that window, we're looking at, it's a market sale. It is 100%. The assessment should be reflective of that sales price.
Yeah, I mean, I see this as a benefit to the county. I don't know if, like, I have to agree with Rich. I don't know if it's a benefit for the individual homeowner. But if you're making a more accurate assessment, you're getting 100% of the property value
Yes,
of each house.
yes.
Then can we say, instead of taking in more money, you have whatever your tax rate is, we'll be able to cut the tax rate down universally? Because in
You're
other,
taking in the right amount of money. You're taking in the exact amount that your voters
but
approve.
if you get
That's the issue.
100%, if you're taking 100% out, then we'll be able to lower the rates, right?
Well, lower the rates. No, year after year, if you're at 100%, the rate,
Well, our rate is, I'm not sure what
let's-
our rate is
But
exactly
let's
now.
assume we have an economic catastrophe, which God knows we all had in 2008.
sure.
Does that mean everybody's home value drops by 40% and we adjust the rates accordingly?
If the market bears that adjustment. do you
Nobody's
believe
buying
that
houses. What if nobody's buying houses?
Everyone across the board felt the impact of that catastrophe equally? No, and nor should that.
Well, no, that's not a fair statement. I would make the argument, maybe they didn't feel it equally, but they all felt
They
it.
all felt it, and that was, it's gonna cost.
It may have been 10% here, but it could have been 40% there. But
So
they may
along
not have
those
been
lines,
equally.
as along those lines, your example, then the one that felt 10% loss should experience a 10% reduction. And then accordingly, so with the 40%. But you shouldn't merge this together so that the
I've yet-
10% gets 20%.
I've yet to see a government in any way, shape, or form reduce that level of assessment. Maybe there have been reductions in assessment of 10 to 15%, but I can assure you, I want to sit here, I'll sell tickets for the day we have a government that would reduce assessments by 30 or 40%,
Well, can I just-
as they should have done in 2008, and it did not happen. So I really feel that the taxpayer is on the hook here somehow. I get all the shifting of how we're going to do this. I understand we'll go more from defense to offense. That's great, but no one's talking about the taxpayer. No one's talking about that individual homeowner who's going to eat this program.
Eat this,
Well,
sir,
let's,
all due
no,
respect.
with all due
This
respect,
was
sir,
built
you
for the
want to
taxpayer.
get from a 30-point swing to a 4-point swing.
Correct.
That's going to cost somebody,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, and it's going to be that homeowner.
Well, we're getting back to my point. If you're taking, let's say the houses on average are assessed at 80% of the current market value,
Okay.
and now we get it up to 100%,
Okay.
does that mean that we give something like, 20% or whatever the exact percentage comes out back to the taxpayer?
No,
Back to the taxpayer.
no.
The math doesn't work that way. I'm
If,
sorry.
let's say we're collecting $80 from a household in taxes, but we really should be collecting 100, in the new system, we get 100. Well, our cost of government hasn't gone up.
Hey, Matt, explain, it's a net zero game. I think that's.
It doesn't,
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Assessments are a net.
You're not looking at it the right way, if I might.
No, what I'm saying is, if we're taking in more money because we're getting a more accurate assessment, shouldn't we,
But
shouldn't
you're not.
the county,
You're not.
shouldn't the
Tax
state,
rate will drop.
shouldn't the
You're
county,
going to pay.
shouldn't the state, county, and municipal governments be able to lower the rates?
Yeah.
Matt, can I just speak for a second? What happens is we strike a budget at the county. Let's say it's $300 million, because that's what we need to run the county, right? Now, we've had shifts, and house pricing, it shifts. So you as a town will get a number that you will have to pay to the county. It's just the way it works. There's 3 parts of your tax. We're not looking to collect any more money. What happens is if in over a 10-year period, your house goes from being worth $1.3 million and the actual cost of it is $900,000, right? So you've lost $400,000 in net value, if I'm saying this right, Matt.
Okay.
And then what happens is, because you still have a burden, you still have a taxable burden back to us. We're not raising it, we're not changing it. We're trying to shrink what we collect from the taxpayer. So I don't think you can actually look at it. Well, as a freeholder, what we're really trying to do is we've held our budget to 0% increase over the last 3 years. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you got a 0% because of the way that the algorithm works or the way that the multiplier goes, because you have a certain amount based on your property value that we're going to collect, just like they do in Spring Lake, like they do in Middletown. Okay? So what really happens is it's not about really lowering. It's more, if I might, and if I'm wrong, it's kind of a shifting because we have to collect $300 million to run the county. So if your house now, Rich, is only worth $500,000, but Jim's, yours went from $500 to $700, well, that's where it gets shifted. What we're really trying to do is not have those huge swings over a 10-year period because everybody will say, oh my God, I just got killed. Because the old saying, a third go up, a third stay the same, and a third go down. But we're really trying to come up with actual values. And it's new and it's different. But we're not going to lower it. It's really based.
What I'm saying is, in other words, if the houses are assessed at only, let's say that in this town, they're all assessed at 80% of their proper value. Well, right now, we have budgets all based on that. Now suddenly we're getting 100% of that value. We have extra money, don't we?
No.
No,
Your
it's
rate
not.
your rate
It's
drives the
changes.
exact amount of money. But it's not that simple. It's not to say you're all at 80% and you're gonna go to 100%. When we go through this, the truth is, some of you are at 85, some of you are at 110. When you get it right, that's where the micro shifting happens. It's not that, well, if I increase every assessment across the board by 20%, I can just drop the rate, everyone would pay the exact same amount of money. To the penny, literally. The levy is going to be the exact for the municipality, for the county, relative to this town. However, that's not the real world. The issue that we're trying to attain or address here is the fact that you're all not at 80%. That we really want to get to the point of, rather than painting with such a broad brush, that you're all at 80%.
Well, I'm just saying as a simple
Well,
example.
I'm saying that the real goal here is to address the fact that it's not a simple answer, and we want to get to a place where if your change needs to be 20% and yours is 15 and yours is 110, that's the change we want to make. Not this, well, it's convenient, we're going to, make a uniform adjustment. We want to get it right.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm not sure you're understanding my point.
I understand that by going from 80% to 100%, your tax rate will drop so that you'll collect the exact same amount of money. The assessment to market value ratio percentage is irrelevant. We could just cut the assessment in half and double the tax rate.
So you're saying take the current assessment, and if we go to assess it at 100%, then the tax rate would pro rata stay the same?
No, it would not. If you increase the assessments, the tax rate would drop. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
So
I'm saying the tax rate is gonna stay the same no matter whether I'm at 80% or at your 100%.
Yes, yes.
So pro rata, we're adjusting the tax rate to meet this new line.
Yes, if it's an increase for the town, the general tax rate will be dropped.
But but you have to start
That's
with what we
standard.
need to raise.
If I may,
Oh, go ahead.
Well, but the
That-
problem I'm
that's
having is,
happened
I
every
agree with
time
Mr.
we went
Tinkin, we
through
don't seem to
revaluation.
have any data that supports this.
well, the things that we're
And that's
discussing
what's
right now
making me
about
nervous.
going from a reassessment, from an assessment base that was at 70%, and you went up to 100% because you've done a revaluation. Every time that's happened, your general tax rate has been dropped. So you have data to understand the math and the direction that we're going in. That is verifiable from where you sit.
Let me just see if I can simplify it for a second.
Show me
We
the
have,
money.
yeah, if there's, let's say, for example, we have to raise $300 million at the county. Your portion of it happens to be, for argument's sake, 10%. So you have to pay us $30 million, right? Somehow, no matter what your valuation of your house is, you have to come up with $30 million. It's just the way that the formula works. So whether you get it from Mr. Vorbach's house, Mr. Tinkin's house, Mr. Diver's house, it all comes back. And it's just really, call it fairness, because Matt mentioned in the beginning, some people subsidize people that have higher. Hey, how many of us know over a 10-year period, your house goes up in value, you sell it in the 7th or 8th year, and you've got this tremendous windfall that you've been paying taxes basically on a $900,000 house. What we're trying to do is even this out so that we get as close to plus or minus, however, what Matt's trying to get to. This is revolutionary. This is very different. We have the ability now to really see where all of these houses are that people use for comps. Are you in the real estate business or have your brother? No. But anyway, so if you see in the real estate business, people come up with these numbers. We're going to have real-time data, so we're also collecting data as we go forward, so that we'll have the ability, literally, to go into a program. We'll see where what the houses were sold for. Because sometimes if you go to a realtor, they'll say, well, a house like yours, which is 3 miles away, I think you mentioned a mile radius before, something like that, is a little more in line. But ultimately, Rich, this is not a grab by us for more money. That's not what it's about. We have a number, we have to get to that number. You pay your portion of it, it's just the way that it gets divvied up, coming back out of the town. Some people have, and you would rather pay 100% fairness on your house for $500,000 than have Jim maybe pay $900,000 on his $500,000 house. So, it's kind of, it's not.
He can pay now.
Yeah, we want Jim to pay more.
That's what I mean, but the idea behind it is not a grab. It's really a better way.
When we
I
it takes a little while
what you're
to
saying,
think
but
about
I'm
it.
still seeing, I would have to see numbers. I'm still seeing that there's a possible burden that would then have to be picked up by the local municipality.
all of
As opposed to the county.
intended savings, everything that I'm
Well, you see, you
speaking
said
to-
the magic word, these are intended savings.
everything that I'm outlining as
Healthcare was intended to be good, look how that's going.
We're a little
Everything that I'm
closer to
outlining
this than that.
as a target for cost reduction is borne by this governing body, not the county. None of the levy savings that we're talking about are the county's money. Everything that I'm in front of you speaking to are your bills. So there's not a grab. If anything, we're looking down your budgetary requirements and saying, we're intended to cut here, 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 here on your budget, having nothing to do with the county. Yes?
Matt, does this proposed taxation calendar, does this shorten the appeal window?
No. It shortens to the extent of the current statutory window is 3 months. We are retaining that exact same 3 months. What we're doing in the past, because if we were faced with volume appeals, then we would ask for permission to extend that window. But we would use our first 3 months and we'd run a single room and we'd casually go through it. Now with the hugely successful online appeal system and the ability to run multiple rooms at once, we can manage 20,000 appeals within that 3-month window.
All right, so I guess for us, the postcards are mailed November 15th, which is right around Thanksgiving. We have a sizable senior population here who does travel. They do travel to Florida and other places, snowbirds, as some people call them. Has there been given any thought to perhaps mailing the postcards maybe October 15th? Because my concern is some of our constituents, for whatever reason, it's the holiday time and things like that. This timing with their travel and the holidays might make it a little bit more difficult for them to file appeals. Has there been any thought about maybe accelerating the postcards?
Even further, because we have to give the assessment community a window large enough to actually do that data analysis for the future year. It does make a requirement that the assessments, although that they're mailed by the 15th, they are online in the county's free website on that day, November 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody got anything?
Let me just, Matt, this program went into effect as of October 1st.
Correct.
So this program is in effect.
Yes.
basically operating today.
Correct.
There are, I think we talked about 42 municipalities that have already gone out to, could you just go through the process, because you obviously have not, I don't think, you haven't done
Sure.
anything yet. What is the process for Spring Lake? What are their options?
Spring Lake Heights.
Sorry.
Well, the process was that we sent out a letter giving each municipality the opportunity to come and talk about this. It was sent certified mail to each jurisdiction. We had a meeting and we said, okay, here's our timeline, we proposed an implementation schedule for all 53 towns. Some towns have to go through a revaluation first. Other ones, like Spring Lake Heights, can just begin the cost-saving 20% inspection. If there was a need to make a change from that table, we did so. Then the Monmouth County Board of Taxation created the order in accordance with that implementation schedule. And then we sent it to the Division of Taxation, who signed it. Each municipality had 45 days from the date of that signing to appeal it. If they didn't appeal it within that window, it became binding. We had one appeal, that being Bradley Beach, but they didn't appeal to actually say cry foul. What they appealed is that they wanted in earlier. They had at the meeting asked for 2016, and amongst themselves asked for, through appeal, to modify the order so that they can implement the revaluation in 2015. So all other municipalities it becomes binding on, and we've been going through the public proposal process, most people using a competitive contract. And we roughly have 42 jurisdictions that have signed contracts for either revaluation coupled with 5-year inspection, or just a 5-year internal inspection program. But they're in place, again, at the $20-21 per line item.
So Matt, who got that letter here in Spring Lake Heights? Who would that have gone to?
Municipal clerk.
Okay.
Jay Delaney.
Hi, Jay.
Yes.
So that's,
And then if in fact, because this shared levy concern was so important, and we have it in the bill that if in fact a municipality does not comply with the order, then it says within the law that the county of Monmouth would implement it in one given year. The problem with the implementation schedule for Spring Lake Heights is that you're at the last year of being available to do the 20% inspection moving forward. If there is a lag and we end up going to court over this, then we are going to, the county of Monmouth would be speaking about having to implement a revaluation and then beginning the 20% inspection. So what you're looking at right now is the potential cost of exposing to having to do a revaluation in addition to the cost of implementing the internal inspection program.
So we really don't have any choice.
That's the candid answer. Where you stand right now is that you don't have a choice to do it.
Right.
what, can I just, well, the year that you're talking about, so what is, so right now, as Spring Lake Heights sits here today, are we talking about calendar year? Is it the end of this year that they must act, or is it a year from now?
They need to have a contract for 20% inspections in place, or
By,
they have to implement the 20% inspections for 2014. So it's not as if, we're looking at December 31st and then the,
I noticed with the inspection firms, they get a 5-year contract.
it's a.
Why are the terms of the contract mandated by the county? Why can't we just go year to year or whatever?
Well,
I mean, it seems a little bit heavy-handed.
okay, it was designed to find the only purchasing in accordance with public purchasing law, finding the only 5-year vehicle that would satisfy the 20% inspection requirement that we were trying to build. In actuality, what it is a 3-year contract with 2-year options. You have those options. If you, in the 4th year, you didn't want to continue with them, you go back out to bid for
How many
someone
firms
else.
do this? That are approved by the county?
Well, it's not, that's a state
Approximately.
approval. I think there's 8 listed in the state.
If I may also, just in regard to the question about the 3-year versus the 5-year, one of the concerns that it had been expressed by assessors and municipal officials was the consistency of the inspection. If you were to go out this year and get one company to do it, the next year you get a different company to
Jay,
do it.
they're all trained, they have special classes, I saw it.
I understand that, and that certainly is an option.
The assessors have, not the inspection company, that's an outside entity. We're not training them on, we're giving requirements through bid specifications, but we have no control over their personnel. This was a point of continuity within the jurisdiction.
Another question would be, if you've got a reval here, typically the reval companies that we used when I was a councilman in Spring Lake, we knew what their work was like, they were very responsible. So if you had a firm, we're looking for consistency here. I don't want to go away here tonight for you to say, these guys really came in, they're heavy-handed. I want you to know that we want to work with you, and I think you have a year to, but I'm just, it's unfortunate that we're trying to do the right thing. There's a lot here. There really is a lot more. It's not as simple. I mean, I wish it was simple and we could really, but I'm not going to say trust me because we're involved in politics. But this has been thought out for a long time. If you just work with us because it is part of the law, and quite honestly, it's the state, right? It's not necessarily, we're an administrative form of government, so we do a lot of administering of these programs. So just, it's, and I live in Spring Lake just like you do, and I pay taxes, but I would much rather pay 100% valuation on my property than pay, and someone else pays 50. I'd like to make sure that everybody is equal, and that's the way it should work.
Is there any provisions to increase the number of listed firms? Because 8 sounds like, it sounds a little thin for the scope of work.
Right.
To increase competition?
I've never had, that's something controlled by the director of the Division of Taxation. Haven't had any discussion in that.
So there are only 8 approved firms.
That's what he said, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Okay, does anybody else up here have anything to?
No more questions?
I'd like to open it up. Does anyone in the audience have any questions for, okay, Andy,
Andrew
go ahead.
Zelenik, should I 803 Lake
Yeah.
Avenue, Spring Lake Heights? 8 firms for the state, and there's 21 counties. See, here's what I'm afraid of. You're starting inspection in perpetuity here. We're gonna constantly have inspections, right?
Yep.
And there's 8 firms right now, and we can have a 5-year contract. Now, in 5 years, what stops them from raising their rates? Especially if there's only 8. You know what I mean?
I do. I
Hardly
fully
keeps
expect
raising
that.
their prices.
I would, it's a great question. Right now, there's roughly 250,000 line items in Monmouth County. That would represent 50, when this is fully implemented, that's 50,000 line items to be inspected a year over the course of the 5 years. The expectation is that if in fact this goes beyond Monmouth County and there's a demand, there will be competition.
Okay, why are we being the guinea pig? Who's Monmouth County? Why not a small, rural, low-income, low-value county? Why don't they do it there?
They don't have
I
the
don't get it.
technology, they don't have the
We do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do.
But we have eight firms ready to do
Well,
that.
it's like anything,
But that's just the inspection part.
Yeah.
We're talking about the administrative side.
Do you see any chance for any fail, any fumbling, any stumbles?
I'd be foolish to represent that
You
there
see quite
won't
a
be
few,
issues.
and will they cost us money, do you think?
No, I don't see them as being
Okay,
costing
next
money.
thing, how come we have to have physical inspection so frequently? I don't get, I understand what you're trying to do, I get that. Why, especially because if you go for property comparable analysis, comparable market analysis, Boom, 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 5 seconds on a computer to tell you what your house
And
is.
how accurate are they?
Pretty accurate.
Now, I would
Well,
disagree with that.
okay, well then,
And
when you're
my-
not-
one-
okay, if you disagree, I get you. You're gonna inspect my house this year,
Right,
and you're gonna reassess everybody's house.
correct.
And next year, you're gonna inspect his house, and you're gonna reassess mine. How are you gonna reassess mine? Based on the condition and value of his,
Based on market activity.
which is what
But
the realtor's
reliable,
based on.
but reliable data, that's
Oh,
the
they use
difference.
unreliable data. They use closed sales, don't they?
But
No,
that's
I mean,
that's
do
up
they,
to
or do they
price.
make them
That-
up
no,
out of whole
sorry,
cloth?
that's, I'm talking about the amenities of the structure, about the meets and bounds of the property, about did they change the bathroom, was it basement finished? All of those things that drive value is the precision that we want to get to.
So you want to get in my house every 5 years? Not you personally, but you want the government in my house every 5 years?
The old model was every 10 years.
Every 10 years?
And-
Well,
and that's
how-
more
How
acceptable.
many municipalities did it every 10 years?
Everett. In Monmouth
Middletown?
County?
Middletown?
Absolutely.
Really?
Yep.
I read that they didn't. I mean, it could be, you know, you can't believe the press,
No.
any more than you can believe
Well,
county
I-
politicians, but. I mean, I read that in the Asbury Press, that Middletown, in maybe like '04 or '05, had been last redone in '83. And to me, that seems like a cost saving.
No,
And it's exactly
and
what you
I
guys
would
said,
take,
though, no.
I would say the person that, in that model, someone for a decade plus overpaid what they should have.
Oh, probably did.
God,
But,
how can you
but,
be accepting of that? That's not fair.
okay, but here's what happened. Middletown or Spring Lake Heights has to raise X number of dollars to send to the county.
Correct.
Right? Now, right now, we're raising them and we're spending X number of dollars on assessments.
And I want to cut that, I want to
You
cut
said
that
that,
off.
how are you guaranteeing that? You're getting that down to 21 from
Sure,
70?
based
That's
on,
a hell of a cut.
on the contracts, these are in hand. This isn't me guessing at these numbers any longer. The vast
And
majority
how
of
long are
the
these
counties.
contracts good for?
5 years.
And any guarantee of, you know, it's kind of like the, getting the private garbage companies.
Well, Mr.
Come
Zeldin.
in and they're a
Yeah,
lot
so
cheaper.
let's talk about the market in general, all right? So today, we've got, let's call it a deal at $21, okay? And $70 has been what we've used in the past.
Mhm.
Well, when I was first on the council, we didn't pay $70 back in 1996 for an inspection, because we went from 1 year in Spring Lake of $80,000 to within about 5 years, because property values had gone through the roof, for a revaluation, probably closer to $180,000. And that was just the nature of the beast. So all we can say today is that based on the numbers that we have, it will be $21. 70 is a number that we throw out, but that $70 number over a 10-year period could easily become 100. I mean, there's no
Oh,
cost
yeah,
to
it could.
There's
We
no cost.
should look at why that number's 70 and they can come up with 21.
If you go-
There's where the problem
Well,
is.
here's the other thing.
Not completely
If you
changing
go out
the
for a
system.
10-year, if you go out for 10 years, the way that we do it, and you, maybe your administrator, Jay, could go back and see the last time that you did a reval, what did it cost? And then go back 10 years previous to that when you did your reval, you will see that there has been a cost increase, only because of the cost of doing business. So it doesn't matter. It's a cost. You still have to put people on the street, you have to pay their benefits, you have to do all of those things.
Right, and
Yeah.
how are they doing it for 21?
If I could chime in, I think what he was saying was that the 21 is the inspection only. The 70 included the valuation aspect of it, which will now
And
be
the
done.
inspection.
No,
So the 70
correct.
included the valuation and the inspection.
So what you are
And the
doing
appeal
is, you're
And the appeal
eliminating,
defense, right? All
you're
of it.
eliminating
But you're not
$50 and you're keeping it in-house to somebody who's already in the salary, already getting paid.
If the
X dollars.
assess,
That's what is being experienced.
You're assuming, so your 21 is not, your drop from 70 to 21 is not really a $49 drop.
No, you said it was.
no,
it was
actually, I said it was a 40.
Two times.
Two times is,
Two times.
it's a 5-year contract times 2 to equate it to.
But it's
that-
really not a $28 drop either.
Well, if
because
you're
you
not
have-
paying
you
your
have-
assessor more to do it,
Well, yeah,
then
but
it
your
is a
assessor's
savings.
still, your assessor is still defending, he's still defending, right? And he's still
Well,
doing
the idea is
in-house work.
less than when
He's
you have
doing
such
less,
a
but he's
broad.
still doing it.
He's gonna be
not
doing more work
but-
to
but-
the evaluation, but a
zero.
lot less on the other end. It's
He's
really,
not doing zero.
But it's really equaling out, and you're having somebody who's already getting paid to
So you
do
think
work.
that-
You're not paying an assessor any more money.
You think that when you give these contracts out, then that your in-house person becomes zero? Is that what happens, or?
The
am I
in-house-
missing?
No, he's already.
He's already on the.
He's already here.
He's here, yes.
Okay, so he's part of the $70 cost
No,
right now?
No, not at all. The $70 cost is for an outside firm to come in and do inspections, valuation, and then appeal defense for 2 years. The assessor at that time does added assessments, does the rest of the work. In this new environment, he does the valuation and the appeal defense of that revaluation. We have an outside company do the inspection.
So now, our assessor, like Richard said, he's gonna do this for the same amount of money?
Correct.
Really?
Because, as I attempted to explain, it's a shift of, rather than doing the appeal defense, which is a growing product for the local assessor, they're going to do the valuation, and if they get the valuation right, there will be less, far less, appeal defense.
Gentlemen, I'd like to, there's a few other people that have
Okay.
questions, so
I'm sorry.
can we move along? No, that's okay, Andy. Ellen Condello?
Evelyn Dello, 807 Park Avenue. I just want to clear, because I'm a little, my impressions of this is, A, this is a state pilot program, that they're gonna look at it and see if it works, doesn't work, 5 years, say, we'll go back and revisit it and make changes. Is that true? Not true, it's a...
Yes, it is a state pilot program that could be, we could revert back to the old model if, for whatever reason, it's not deemed worthy for continuation.
Okay. Do we have any of the counties that are currently you said, what, 42 towns are on board with this?
Towns within
Towns
Monmouth. There's
within
no
Monmouth.
other county.
No other
doing
county.
this.
So we
No.
are the end-all and be-all model for the state right now,
That is
other
correct.
counties.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. In doing this, we're saying that, and I want to get this clear because I just asked Eileen and we have different impression. Our current assessor, Mr. Elias, will have less, we will pay him X dollars in salary.
What you're currently paying.
Right, okay. So he then is not going to ask for anything more, even though we are having this done, an annual reevaluation, and only 20% of the homes are inspected every 5 years.
That's correct.
Okay. The defense appeals, you're saying, is where we're going to save the money.
No, the defense, that's where Mr. Elias is shifting from his work product of doing an awful lot of appeal defense.
Outside of his regular work hours, is what you said
Correct,
before.
correct. I mean, he's spent days paid for an hour a week here, and when it comes appeal time, his preparation, his interaction with the attorneys and the taxpayers, and then his time spent at the county far exceeds his 1 hour a week.
Right.
So that shift, if he can do the valuation with precision to the point of acceptance by the taxpayer, then there will be no appeal of it.
Okay, so you're saying leveling out the playing field, bringing it down so the numbers equalize themselves out year to year. There should be less appeals.
Yes.
Okay. One of my concerns, and I deal with a lot of seniors in town, and I understand the council's concern. We have people who are money-wise, okay, maxed out with between their taxes now, their medicines, things like that. Monmouth County, for years, has been considered, quote, a very affluent county. True or not true?
True.
Okay. Sometimes unjustifiably so, because a lot of resources from the county aren't always put in this direction. They go to Kingsburg, Neptune, some of the other towns in Monmouth County, Freehold, a lot of money is expended. We don't always get the share of the pie, but we still have the needs. And people don't recognize that because we have the beachfronts, because there are big houses, Spring Lake, things like that. But there are people living in Spring Lake in big houses, no furniture, and having trouble paying their taxes or out of jobs and things like that. One of the things, the components in this that concerns me, in reading the thing in the paper, is that the assessor or the company, you're saying a separate company is going to do the inspections.
Correct.
Okay. A, who gets to decide that company? Does that go through a bidding process?
This group through
The
public
council-
bid,
They
public
will
bidding.
go out to public bid?
Absolutely.
Okay. Of the 8 companies that the county will allow to
Not the
do-
county, it's the state, that
State
threshold
mandate.
set by the state.
Okay, in reading this now, if an inspector comes to a home
Mhm.
and the person does not or cannot, for whatever reason, does not allow them inside, and I have reservations with that because A, what ID are they gonna do? Are they gonna have background checks? Who's going to allow these people in?
It's-
Children, seniors, whatever
It's
else?
written right into the specifications that there are background checks, that they have ID, that they're registered with the police. All of those requirements are in the control of this governing body through the specifications of the contract.
Okay, so that will be spelled out in the contract.
Yes.
All right, one of the things, if they do not get in, the assessor can then charge, make up a figure, the highest number of whatever they so desire of the assessment.
Okay.
Right?
That's an
That
angel.
concerns me.
Well, and it, I get the concern, however, if we did not have an environment where, if you're denied access, you would estimate it to its highest and best possible value
Right, that's the
based
word.
on the footprint that is there. So they're not making up, they're not doubling your square footage. But what they're saying is, if there's evidence that there's a finished basement and a finished attic, then there's quality there. I have to put the value on, not to penalize you because you didn't let me in, but to protect you who did. The idea that if anybody had anything value-wise, based on a homogeneous development, 100 houses built the same, but yet on the inside, they're dramatically different. They're the exact same footprint. They don't have the same market value based on what they've invested on the inside.
Right.
Not
As-
personal property. From the physical structure, they have much more. We can't have them. It's not fair for them to escape taxation just because they said, I don't want you in my house.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with the intent or the place that you as assessors for the state, because your job is to raise as much money.
Not at
In
all,
this
not
case,
at all.
is-
No, my
Well-
job, my singular goal is to make sure the right amount of money is collected from the right people. That's my goal from my county perspective, not collecting.
Okay.
The governing bodies, freeholders and town council members decide what is going to be collected through the voters. That's an approval process that you have a fractional ability to interact with, admittedly, but that is not, my job is to make sure it's done right.
Your job is to see that the law is followed
That's
and
correct.
carried out to the best of your ability.
So let's go back to a question. Now, you asked a question, and let me see if I can answer it. As far as access into buildings for some of our senior citizens and people that you can't get to, this is gonna be a project for the council, your administrator, Mitch Elias, and they will know, or, for example, if you couldn't get into your house and you had someone you could call and say, we'd like to schedule a time. You work with the company. The company is pretty good at trying to get into every single house. And I would say
This is my
that
question, will it be by appointment? Can
You-
people have the ability to
that will
make
be part
that
of the
appointment?
RFP that you put out. It's,
The typical process is that they cold call, knock on the door. If no one answers, or for whatever reason they're denied access, they will leave a door hanger that says, we tried to get in, could you please contact us so that we can arrange for a mutually agreeable time, convenient time. And then if nothing comes within a stated period of time, they then try again to get there. Now that's much different than when someone says, I don't feel safe. If there's a reason that they're not letting you in, is handled much differently than someone that answers the door and says, quite frankly, go to hell, you're not getting in my house. Okay.
the police should know also. This is should be a very well
They go
organized.
to the door, there's an Alzheimer's person in the home.
Look,
Okay, maybe the person.
we're not-
We've
This
addressed
might be
those
right.
types of, we've addressed those type of issues
Yeah, we've done this.
with absolute, the necessary level of TLC. When we've been faced with them, I mean, the assessor works for the governing body. That process should be handled very carefully. If we know of a subset of the community that needs some special attention, it's provided for. But what you're describing is the worst-case scenario. They just don't get in. Well, tell me why they don't get in. If there's a reason for it, and we can work around it, it gets worked around. And that's my 20-plus years' experience as a county tax administrator, that those issues get worked out well, not heavy-handed at all.
Sorry, do you want?
Anybody else have another
Get on
question?
with your business.
Yeah, because we have quite an agenda.
Yeah.
I mean, when
Steve.
this is put into effect, it will, and you're gonna do the 20% of the town, it'll be one section of the town, you'll be notified, between such and such a date. will be given a
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so bird's eye view down, it's logical, it's clustered together, carve the town into 5 logical units, roughly, it may be 18%, 22%, however that works out, over 5 years, 100%. And they are notified by mail saying,
I mean, at least
You
at
will
least
be-
give us a month in advance that you're gonna be there or something, I mean, some people do go away for a month at a time.
I agree. I agree. And if, in those circumstances, I fully expect that there's language in the relationship with the company that for some reason they could not get in, then they would circle back in the next 20%.
Anyway.
Well, I'd like to thank.
Thank you very much, appreciate your
both of
time.
you
I
gentlemen
know it's a little
for coming.
confusing, but our intent is really to make it easier.
If there's any questions individually, could you please contact me at the county tax board? My goal is.
Sorry, you know how to get Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank